Hey guys, Chris Dick here. Today we're going to be talking about some client-side coding techniques, and we're still working with our student objects. In the last video we used Entity Framework to show some one-to-many relationships with our addresses. So today we're going to be using jQuery, and we're going to be creating a simple API in our addresses controllers to get the addresses that are related to a student. So from here, what we have to do is we have to add a controller to get started. Using this client-side coding can take a little bit of time to set up, but once you're set up, it's not that bad. So we click on add and then we go to controller, and from this point we're going to be adding an address controller, and it's just the same as we did with our student controller. We simply click a entity framework view with views, and then that'll create our create, edit, delete functions as well, and also give us an index page. So from here in the model class, we're going to select addresses. You'll notice that, or address model, you'll notice that from the controller name, it gives us a name of addresses, which is the plural. All the controllers are related to the plural form, not the one form. You can certainly name it that, but it won't make sense to do that. So we click on add, and that'll take a little bit of time sometimes to get started. So we'll just wait for it to get ready. Okay, so our address controller is ready. You'll notice that it looks fairly similar to the student controller in that it's got index, details, create, edit, all the rest. We have our DB context. Its name is DB up here. And I generally like to put a lot of my API calls down to the very bottom here. All right, so I'm going to add it right here above the dispose method. Now we're going to be working with JSON. You can also work with XML results if you like. That will be in another video. So for this one, we're going to be creating a public method. It will return a JSON result. Its name will be get, and we're going to create a nullable int object. So this is going to be relating to the student ID. Okay, and just to be descript, right? You could just say ID if you like, but I'm just being a little bit more descript. Okay, similar to what you see up here. All right, and we're using nullable because there may be cases where you just want to get all of the addresses, so perhaps you may add some functionality later on that allows for all of the addresses to be gathered. Now we're going to be working with our database that will return a list of address objects. So from here, I'm going to create an IEnumerable that uses address objects. Okay, I'm going to call it items because I'm returning more than one item, and I'm going to create a type of IEnumerable called a list. And this will be a list of addresses. Okay, and on our return, remember I usually, when I'm developing, I like to close off everything so that so top to bottom, that way every time I do something, I'm always I don't have to clean up at the end, or I haven't forgotten most, but it doesn't always work, so it's pretty close. So from here, we're going to be returning JSON. Okay, that's the result that we're returning, and we're returning our items. Gotta spell that right. Okay, and it's a JSON behavior or request behavior, and we're going to be allowing get. Okay, now our get, just because we're actually using this to get information, and that's all. You have to allow the controller to actually give you that request ability. So here we're going to say that if student ID dot has value, so we're going to ask, does it have a value? If it has a value, we're going to use it. So we're going to query that information. So we do items equals DB, that's our data context, addresses dot where, okay, s.s student ID equals, this is a double equal sign because we're comparing, okay, student ID dot value. Okay, so what this is going to do is it's going to give us all of the addresses where student equals student ID. Okay, now what you'll have to think about here, and this is a problem that often happens here when you start working with JSON and XML. If you recall, a lot of the details that we get have related objects. That means that an address will have a student, all right? And in some cases you may have many results. So if I bring up a student object, entity framework will naturally use lazy loading, which will say, by the way, here's a list of addresses that are related to this student as well. So if I have a list of addresses, then I also have a student that is attached to that address. Then I have another list of addresses within that student, and it just creates something called a circular reference. So what we're going to do is turn off that ability to have circular references. The first step in doing that is we have to modify the configuration while we're doing this, and we're going to turn off proxy creation. Okay, that way we will have to request the information if we actually need it. So that will be one step. The next thing is we have to do as no tracking. So in other words, it's not going to load that student unless we specifically request that student to be loaded. Okay. Now, one more thing, we have to add in a part or a description to our address, and I'm just going to do this here. It is called script ignore. Okay, now you'll see that it's got a red underline. We could press Control period on that red underline. It pops down this box here that says we want to add this system.web.script serialization, and we say yes, we want to add that. All right, so now when it goes to create the student object, it's going to look at this. If we're calling from script, it's going to say, oh, I don't need to create that, just ignore it now. Okay. All right, so the next stage is we want to test our JSON and make sure it actually worked. This is a fairly simple process, but we'll go through it. We'll get into the addresses controller and actually display that. Okay, our page is up now. We're going to just type in here. We don't have access to our addresses yet, and I've already used a call to this get method, so we're going to try and call it right now. It'll pull up, and what it'll bring out is our list of addresses in JSON format. Okay, you'll see there is 6 addresses related to this student. Okay. Yeah, there's 6 there. Sorry, I just wanted to double check. I thought I saw 7, but it's not. Okay, now the next step that we need to do is actually add the functionality to our student page. And what we have to do on this page here is we need to ensure that we are in the proper section where we can use our jQuery, and I'll just explain that to you. If I go into the shared layout and go to the very bottom here, our jQuery and Bootstrap gets rendered at the very bottom. Now this is just so that it saves so that it renders the top part of the page first, and then takes a little bit of time to load the rest of it. We have a section called scripts, and that's where we're going to be adding most of our code. So if we're going to go over to our details page now, and we type simply @scripts, @section scripts, that is, okay. I'm going to bring that down like this. and we can start adding in any of the scripts that we want to do. So here we're going to do a JavaScript, so it's text, JavaScript, okay, and from here we start doing some jQuery. All right, so this jQuery is very simply going to be asking for a function, and we're going to do on the document ready. We are going to, sorry folks, there we go. We're going to be starting off with what things we're going to do within the document ready function. The first thing we're going to do is perform a get, and this get asks for a URL and then another function. Okay, this function you need to be sending, or you'll be receiving the data and the status of the function. Okay. And once again, I try to sort of close everything at the same time. All right. Now we have a URL that we're going to be calling, so we're going to build that URL right now. Okay, URL, and put some quotes there. Now we're going to use a little bit of the C# here to ask for the URL. You could just type the URL out just the same way. It's there's no problem with doing that. Okay. Our action here requires our URL action will actually build the full URL string for us, and then we're not having to worry about slashes or spelling errors. So here we are asking for the get action. Then we're asking for the controller name, and if you recall, we are in the students controller. So we have to actually specify which controller to ask for the information. This here is our route values. That's what I'm going to be putting in right now. If you recall, we had student ID as our parameter, and we're going to send in a student ID from our model that's coming in. Okay, so now we have a fully built URL. Now the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to build some output that will be output to our to an area of our page. So this area, I'm going to comment this out, and I'm going to build another function here. So here we are very simply, actually, you know what, I'm going to do this here. Let's take that out for a moment. We're going to just comment out this area. Okay, and I'm going to give this UL an ID. We're going to call it addresses. Okay, so what we're going to be doing is setting the inner HTML of the UL. So we're going to obviously be building some LI tags coming through this. So from this point, I'm going to use a for each method for processing our data. Okay, and our function in the for each has an index and the item. So it's like you have an iterator and an object that you can work with. So in this case, we're going to be having address objects that come through. So we're going to be working with those objects. All right. Now, we should, in fact, at this point, create a variable as empty, and then at the end, we're going to be supplying addresses with the inner HTML of output. Remember, I'm always trying to do the top and bottom, start and finish of things, and then get started on the middle after that. So from this point, we start building our output. So we're concatenating strings every time. The first thing is we want to append the open li tag. Naturally, that means we have a closing li tag. Okay. The next stage is we start adding in all the pieces of our item. So I'm going to go over to our addresses model and just find out our full names of things. So we're going to copy the street number like that. Okay. And I copy a bunch of them down here, that way I don't have to do it again. Our street name, city. I prefer to copy paste things because all too often we will make a mistake as we're typing something out, and then especially in scripting you'll spend all your time struggling to find out where something went wrong, and usually it's just a spelling error. Okay, good. All right, now what we've got here is just a list, and the way this looks like is just going to return a bunch of a jumbled bunch of text. So we're going to just append some delimiters here. So here is this one. Here is a space. This one will be separated by a comma. Another comma. Same thing. Comma, comma, and nothing at the end. So we should be all right there. Okay, I think we are pretty much ready to go, if I'm right. So we'll play this. Okay, we'll refresh this page here. This is our details page that we had done up before. And if all went well, it should look exactly the same as the entity framework page. Okay, we'll refresh this now. And there we have it. Now what you'll see is with the entity framework it loaded very quickly, and with the jQuery it opened the page and then finally requested the data and then displayed the data. So what you'll notice the difference is that you're going to get a fast full page display, and then the related object will display as it gathers the information. So once again, it's a toss-up between what you decide is important to you. Sometimes it's just not, it's more important to display the page faster so that people believe that, okay, there's not something wrong with the page. It just sort of adds a little bit of credibility in some points. And of course, working with an API is a better way to go as you start to move your site out to mobile applications and other types of applications. That way it's disconnected from a data source, and that's a very important point. Okay guys, that's it for this lesson. Thanks very much, and remember to like and share, and please subscribe to my videos. Thanks a lot. Take care. Bye.